Both sides. We are now on Daf Lamed Beis Amid Beis, which we began yesterday, and we're up to Hainu Dikatani, which are the last two words on about line 20 down from the top of the Amid. The line starts with the words Lavam, with the word Lavam. And we're in the middle of a sugya, so this part of the discussion might not be so clear to you, but it doesn't matter. We'll get by this and we'll be able to complete and then start something new. Hainu diktani, that which we had in the Bryce of Rebbe is now the Omer. You read the end of the pasuk and it says, Bigdei Kodesh Heim v'rachatz b'mayim es b'saro uleveisham. Now these words, Bigdei Kodesh Heim, are redundant. There was no need for the Torah to add Bigdei Kodesh Heim. We're talking about Bigdei Kodesh. Why did the Torah have to repeat itself? And we're going to learn from this a hekesh of all begodim, zeh zeh. And every time the Kohen Gadol changes his begodim on Yom Kippurim, he needs tefillah, as the pasuk says, "V'rachatz b'mayim es b'sara." Therefore, just like the Kohen Gadol is tovel for levishas bigdei lavan, which is explicit in the Torah, we're going to derive an equation that so too, when he puts on his bigdei zav, he likewise requires tefillah, because the pasuk says bigdei kodesh hem, and bigdei kodesh hem equates all of the begodim, whether it's the bigdei lavan that he wears when he does the avodah yuchedes lifnai v'lifnim, whether it's the bigdei zav when he does all the other avodas that are common to every day of the year. In all cases, he needs a tefillah, and therefore, what the Gemara said before, that was the last sugya that we learned yesterday about the pircha, that how could we equate bigdei zav with bigdei lavan? After all, bigdei lavan he wears when he goes in the kodesh kadosh lifnai v'lifnim, and we understand that requires a tefillah. How do we know that tefillah is a requirement even for bigdei zav? The answer is this hekesh from the three extra words bigdei kodesh hem. Okay, now we go back to the Brisa, and the Brisa says, Chamesh avodos hen. We're going to now go through 5 major avodos that the Kohen Gadol has to implement on Yom Kippur, beginning with Tavit Shel Shachar, and for that he needs Bigdei Zav, because again, the Tavit Shel Shachar is not an avodah miyuchedes, it's an avodah the whole year. However, avodas hayom, and we'll see what's included in Avodas Hayom. These are the unique avodos of Yom Kippurim that don't apply the whole year round. And that's the big they love on. He has to wear his linen garments for begodim. Elo, the El Ha'am, the big day zav. The bringing of his aisle, which we discussed earlier, and the aisle of the people, that's already considered Shar Avodas Hayom. And there's no need for wearing Bigdei Lavan. He can wear his regular garments, Bigdei Zav, that he wears the whole year round. Nothing is Lifnai v'Lifnim in terms of the aisle Shel Kohen, the aisle Shel Ha'am. In fact, if you recall, we discussed Bigdei Zav being inappropriate for Lifnai v'Lifnim because Ein Kateger Nas Saneger. That doesn't apply b'chutz. That only applies in the Kodesh Kadosh. Then we get to the Kaf Umachta. And if you recall, we said that the Kaf Umachta is an Avodah Miyuchedes Liyom Kippurim. It is Aktoras not of the whole year round, which is implemented in the Heichal on the Mizbeach HaPnimi, but rather it's going to take him into the Kodesh Kadoshim. There's no Mizbeach in the Kodesh Kadoshim. The Machta itself is holding on to the Gecholim, and that's what he's doing in one hand, and with the other hand, he's going to pour the Torres into this Machta and burn Achetamla Tale Tamra. All this takes place in the Kodesh Kadoshim, hence the Kohen Gadol has to be wearing Big Day Lavan. Now he's ready to go out and be makriv the Talmud, not the Talmud Shel Shachar, but the Talmud Shel Ben Arbayim, the second Talmud, the Big Day Zah. Fine. So now we have all these different categories of avodah, and we understand which begadim the Kohen Gadol has to wear for each category. Now the Brisa continues. We know that every single time he changes his begadim, he needs a tefillah. So we have now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now he needs a Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim before and after each tefillah. So the Brisa now quotes the opinion of Rebbe. And Rebbe, which we'll get to a little later, his drasha is Talmud Lomar, Upashat Virachatz Virachatz Vilavash. And we take this as a hekesh, as if the words Virachatz Virachatz are written next to each other. They're not written next to each other, but we're going to make them contiguous. So we have Upashat, and then we have Vilavash. In between, we have Virachatz Virachatz. So one Virachatz is going on Upashat, and the Pshita, the taking off the garments, generates a Chiv Tvila, of Rechitza, of Rechitza Yadayim, and Vilavash has its own Rechitza, and therefore you need a second Kiddush when he puts on the new Begadim. And since he's changing his Begadim 5 times, and he needs 5 Tvilos, he therefore needs 5 times 2 Kiddush. So Gemara raises the following question. Hi, this pasuk of V'rachatz es b'sar b'mayim b'makom kadosh is b'tfila ksiv. When it says V'rachatz es b'saro, it's not referring to Yadayim V'Raglayim and the Kiyar. B'saro is a reference to Tvila and Mikvah. Rechitzas b'saro. Basar means the flesh, not the hands and the feet. And basar includes the entire body, from head to toe, has to be submerged in the water. How then can Rebbe learn and derive the din of Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim from the pasuk V'rachatz es b'saro b'mayim, which is clearly a reference to Tvila? So the Gemara now applies one of the various rules by which we interpret the Torah and derive halachic conclusions from the Torah. That's called Hamidah Shatorah Nidreshes Bahen, which is called an Eino Inyan. That sometimes you can lift up a pasuk or a few words in a verse by crane, so to speak, and re-establish it elsewhere. If it has no chidush, it has no additional insight, it's not giving me anything new that I didn't know, then I lift it up and I relocate it. I put it down elsewhere. The Nafkale, Rebbe is of the opinion that we derived tefillah mean big day kodesh hand. So we already have a source for tefillah. That was the Gemara we studied yesterday. So therefore, when there's a smichus, and it says v'rachatz b'saro, v'rachatz b'mayim es b'saro. Again, the first pasuk that we talked about, we're all in Perek Tez Zayin of Sefer Vayikra. The first pasuk, which is really the second pasuk, but the first pasuk that we discussed here is pasuk Chav Dalet, v'rachatzas b'saro b'mayim. But if we go back to pasuk Dalet, it says v'rachatz b'mayim es b'saro ulevei sham. So Rebbe derives from this a hekage of all Bigdei Kahuna, one to the other. And he derived the conclusion that whenever you put on any of the begadim, you need a tefillah. Now, since the pasuk v'rachatz v'lavash is no longer necessary to teach me the din of tefillah, because I already derived the din of tefillah from v'rachatz b'mayim es b'saro, is tnei le'inyan kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. Gemara says v'lithrei rachmana. Lashon Kiddush. Why is the Torah so ambiguous? Should have said v'rachatz says yada v'ragla. Why v'rachatz es b'saro? Is the Torah playing games with us, deliberately misleading us? You have two ways of getting to your destination. You can go around here, or you can go straight. So give me the straight way. Yada v'ragla. Why is the Torah stingy on the words Yada v'ragla? Instead, it says Kol b'saro. A kamashmal, and this is a very important Gemara. The tefillah kikiddush, that the halachic requirements of tefillah to prepare the Kohen Gadol for his avodos are identical with the requirements of kiddush. Now, you and I might think it's counterintuitive. Kiddush is only a dime for Aglayim. It should have lower standards. We should be more loose and laid back about it. Whereas tefillah is called gufo, we should be more machmir. It works the opposite entirely. Because with regard to Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, there's a special requirement called Makom Kadosh, which means that it's not just that you find yourself a place, where you could wash your hands and your feet. It's got to be Makom Kadosh. It's got to be in the Azorah. And where in the Azorah? In the Kiyar. The Kiyar was located in the Azorah. And that requirement of Makom Kadosh would not logically apply to Tefillah and Mikvah. Mikvah means you want to be matire yourself and prepare yourself, find yourself a Mikvah. Ma Kiddush b'Makom Kadosh, af Tefillah b'Makom Kadosh. And now we're going to set up a unique, special Mikvah in the Azor itself, b'Makom Kadosh, which is called the Gag of Beis Parva, which you may remember that we studied when we were doing the introduction to Kodshim. And the Gag of Beis Parva is considered part of the Azorah, and therefore it's b'Makom Kadosh. Now, how many tefillos was the Kohen Gadol Tovel on Yom Kippur on the Gag of the Beis Parva? If you were a young fellow, and I asked you that question, you would, and I'm testing you, your grade depends upon it, you would automatically answer 5, because there are 5 tefillos on Yom Kippur. Name. Only 4 out of the 5 require Gag of Beis Parva the Azor, not the first tefillah, because the tefillah Rishona, he was Tovel in the base Hatfila that was Al Gav Shar Hamayim. Not the Parva, but the Shar Hamayim. The Shar Hamayim was B'Makom Chol. Now here we have 2 ways of explaining why the first Tefillah could have been in Chol, whereas the Torah, by virtue of the equation to Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, requires that the tefillos be b'Makom Kadosh. One answer is that the entire enterprise of the first tefillah is only derabbanan. and the Rabbanu were not as machmir as they would be if the tefillah was a doraisa requirement. The other way of saying it is that because he's taking off big day chol, we always discussed tefillah as generated by big day kodesh to big day kodesh, went from Lavan to Zav, back and forth. The first tefillah is big day chol. Therefore, you don't require makom kodesh. So the Gemara now asks Rabbi Yehuda, Kiddush minole. If you recall, Rabbi Yehuda yesterday derived from the pasuk the Rachatz, the first of the two psukim in the parasha, a chiyuv tvila in the case where he's being lovesh big day lavan, and Rabbi Yehuda refused to extend that to apply to big day zav. So if that be the case, then from the pasuk of the Rachatz, the second pasuk of the Rachatz in the parasha, we're going to have to use that pasuk to derive the chiyuv tefillah in big day zav, is kiddush minolet. How does Rabbi Yehuda find the source for the halacha, the requirement of kiddush yadayim raglayim? We need both psukim, one for big day zav and one for big day lavan. We don't have a source for kiddush yadayim raglayim. And the Gemara answers, Nafkali Rabbi Yehuda will derive the chiyuv kiddush yadayim raglayim min Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. We had back on Daf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph a brisa that records the shita of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, excuse me. That there's a kal v'chomer. Let's go over the kal v'chomer. A kohen comes to do the avodah in the mikdash the rest of the year. The Torah doesn't require tefillah. The Torah only requires kiddush yadayim raglayim. How much more so with regard to the avodah of Yom Kippurim will the kohen gadol require tefillah? I'm sorry. Will the kohen gadol require kiddush yadayim raglayim? The whole year round, he doesn't require tefillah, and he gets away with kiddush yadayim raglayim. And on Yom Kippur, where he requires tefillah, then for sure he's going to require kiddush yadayim raglayim. Again, if you would ask me, I would say just the opposite. Since he has tefillah, maybe he doesn't need kiddush yadayim raglayim. But the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, lays down the foundation that these are fundamentally two types of kiddushim. There's one tara in a mikvah, and there's another kiddush yadayim raglayim for the purpose of avodah. So once the Torah has the equation between pshita and levisha, because it says upashat is big day abada shalavash, therefore we're going to derive two kiddushim for each one of the tefillahs. One is by when he takes off the begadim, and one is when he puts on the new set of begadim. That, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is the source for 10 kiddushim on Yom Kippur. So it's so fascinating to me that whereas Rebbe is looking high and low for a source for kiddushim and quoting the psukim, Rachatz, etc., Rabbi Yehuda doesn't even need a pasuk for kiddushim because he derives it from a kal v'chomer. If the whole year round he needs kiddush, then certainly on Yom Kippur he needs kiddush. The whole year round he doesn't need tefillah. Yom Kippur he needs tefillah, for sure he needs kiddush. Okay, fine. Now, according to Rebbe, in between pshita and levisha, he requires two kiddushim. Amar Rav Chisda, Hada Rebbe, according to Rebbe's opinion, that we have a hekesh between upashat v'rachatz v'lavash. The kohen gadol has to be mekadesh kiddush l'pshitas habegadim. That's number one. And number two, kiddush Lilevishas begodim. The Rebbe mafka midir Rabbi Meir. In other words, mafka means he goes out of, or he excludes and contradicts the shita of Rabbi Meir. In other words, we have a stira here between Rebbe, who derives from a hekesh, that the Kohen Gadol needs Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, one for Pshita, for taking off the begodim, and the other for Levisha. That contradicts Rabbi Meir. Umafka midrabanan. Not only that, it contradicts even the Shita of the Chacham who disagree with Rabbi Meir. So what exactly is Rav Chizda's analysis of Kiddushim or Seder HaKiddushim according to Rebbe? Number one, the Torah says, "Upashat es bigdei abad," and then "V'rochatz es b'saro b'mayim." So that's one Kiddush. Then it says, "V'lavash es bigadav." So what's the Seder for Levicha and for Pshita? So in the Masifta, he adds a note. He says that the Seder is going to be Pshita, Kiddush Rishon, Tvila, Kiddush Sheni, and then Levisha. So the fascinating thing is that, as it turns out, according to Rebbe, the Kiddush number one and the Kiddush number two, both are sandwiched in between Pshita and Levisha. It's not that there's one Kiddush before Pshita and another Kiddush before Levisha. No. He did his Levisha. I'm sorry. He did his Pshita. Now he needs Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, goes into the mikvah, and again a Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim as a preliminary to Levisha. The Ilu Rabbanan Amri, Shu Lavush Mekadesh, meaning before he does the Pshita, he does a Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim before the Pshita. Iru Amar True Poshet Mekadesh. And Rebbe holds that after the Pshita, he does the Kiddush. So this is against the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan require the Kiddush before he does the Pshita, and Rebbe says he does the Kiddush after the Pshita. Mafka mit Rabbi Meir. And where do we find the stira contradiction between Rebbe and Rabbi Meir? The Ilu Rabbi Meir Omar Hach Kiddusha Basra Ishu Lavush Makadesh. Rabbi Meir, very similar to the Chachamim, but the Chachamim are talking about Pshita, and they require the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim before Pshita. Rabbi Meir is talking about Levisha, and he requires Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim before the Levisha. The Iu Amar, and Rebbe disagrees with both the Chachamim and Rabbi Meir, Kishu Poshet Makadesh, that it's only after the Kiddush, after the Pshita, he's taken off his clothes, that's when he does the Kiddush. And Makadesh, before the Levisha, in anticipation of the Levisha. That is the understanding of Rav Chizda. Now we get to a different alternative approach, and this is Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Hakol Modim, even the Chachamim, Rabbi Meir, all of them agree. Modim Kiddush Sheni shel Lovesh v'Yachach Mekadesh. that the Levisha comes first, and then the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. Which is exactly Rebbe Shita, but we understood that the Chachamim require Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim before Pshita. Rav Acha is claiming no, even the Chacham would agree, as far as Kiddush Sheni is concerned, that the Kiddush Yadayim is after the Levisha, not like Rav Chizda. The Omar Kra, because the pasuk says, I'll read the whole pasuk. V'rachatzu Aaron ubonav mimenu es yideyim v'esragleim b'voim el ol moed yirchatzu mayim. And then it says, O begishtam el hamizbeach. And what is this word begishtam coming to teach me? Misha. Me, the word me is referring to the Bnei Aaron. Misha, who, someone who's loveless, she's wearing bigdei kahuna, and Eino mechusar ella gisha. And the Torah says he should be kaddish yadav v'radav. Why? Because all he's missing is gisha. He just has to go up to the mizbeach, but he's already lavush in bigdei kahuna. Yatsa zeh. In other words, this pasuk now wait a second, which word in the pasuk is he referring to? Just give me a second. So we're talking about the Kohen Gadol, and we're talking about Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, and according to Rav Acha, when the pasuk says O begishtam ela mizbeach, it's Eino mechutzer ela gisha. He's already wearing his begadim. And now he needs Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. Right. So what is this coming to exclude? Yotze zeh shu mechuser levisha v'gisha. Just 1 second. So again, let's just go over this one more time. According to Rav Chizda, in the framework of Rebbe Shita, the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim is sandwiched between the Pshita and the Levisha. According to Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, there was never a debate about Kiddush Yadayim Liachar Levisha. And how does Rav Acha Bar Yaakov derive that conclusion? And the Gemara says it's from the pasuk O begishtam el hamizbeach. So it's got to be after Levisha. Since the Torah says the yirchetzu mayim o begishtam el hamizbeach, the o begishtam el hamizbeach means he's already lavish bigdei kahuna, and now he's approaching the mizbeach. That's called mishu Eino mechuser ela gisha, but Rav Chizda would say that even before the Levisha, he's got to do a kiddush. No, yotza zeh. This is coming to exclude the Kohen Gadol from kiddush yadayim raglayim before the Levisha, because it's got to be eina mechuser ela gisha. Now, shehu mechusar levisha vegisha. In other words, you cannot apply the gishtem ela mizbeach here because he hasn't yet put on his big day kahuna, and therefore we must conclude that he's already put on his big day kahuna, and then he does kiddush yadayim raglayim. I know it's getting late. I just wanted to finish the sugi. It's only 4 more lines. Let's see. If you have to go, you have to go. I see. Amalei Rav Acha Breda Rav Rav Ashi Lo Rav Chizda Islay de Rav Acha Velo Rav Acha Islay de Rav Chizda. In other words, when Rav Chizda said that according to Rebbe, the 2 kiddushin take place sandwiched between Pshita and Levisha, this Shita of Rav Chizda could not tolerate the Shita of Rav Acha bar Yaakov in Rebbe, who says that the Kiddush Hasheni takes place before Levisha, just 1 second. According to Rav Acha, that both Kiddushim are between Pshita and Levisha, then we're rejecting Rav Acha bar Yaakov, who says that according to Rebbe, the Kiddush is before Levisha. No, I'm sorry. Rav Acha bar Yaakov said that everybody agrees that he has to be Lovesh first, and then he's Makadosh Yadayim Raglayim, and therefore Rav Chizda rejects that. The low Rav Acha Islay de Rav Chizda, Rav Acha is going to reject Rav Chizda in interpreting Rebbe. Shet Sarach Lahasmich Kiddush Lavoda, so that it shouldn't be a case of Mechusa Levisha Vigisha. So he's got to be Lovesh his Begodim first and then do Kiddush. That rejects Rav Chizda, who says, according to Rebbe, that we derive from V'rochav V'lovash, that he has to first do the Kiddush before the Levisha. Dim Kain, if you were to say that Rav Chizda and Rav Acha agree, is then LeRebbe Havale Chamesar Kiddushim. There would be 15 Kiddushim. If you're going to combine the 2 shitas of Rav Chizda and Rav Acha, you're going to require 3 Kiddushim for each Tvila. You're going to need a Kiddush after Pshita, which would be Rav Chizda, and that's derived from the Pasuk Poshat V'Rocha. You'll need a Kiddush before the Levisha, again, according to Rav Chizda. And now you're going to have to add a Kiddush Li'achar Levisha, midin the Gishtav El Mizbech, to fulfill the requirement of Rav Acha. And we have Halacha L'Moshe Sinai that there are only maximum 10 Kiddushim, not more. So we must assume, therefore, says Rav Acha, that Rav Chizda rejects Rav Acha bar Yaakov, and Rav Acha bar Yaakov rejects Rav Chizda. These 2 shitos are mutually exclusive. That's what Rav Acha Breda Rava is telling us. Okay, let's just make a note of where we got up to here. We're up to Hevilo, Es hatamid. Okay, then. So we'll stop here. Everyone should have a great day.